Hi Penpot friends, I'm Laura and today I'm going to introduce you to some of the most common interactions you'll prototype using Penpot. So let's get to it. Navigating between views is one of the simplest tasks you might want to achieve with an interactive prototype. A view could be a page, a screen, or any process you can break into steps. For this example, I'll mock up the navigation between the home, trending, and shop all views for a poster store website. I've got my boards ready here. First up, I'm going to give my boards short, unique, and descriptive names. The names will be useful as we'll have to find them in the drop-down menu later. Next, I'll enter prototype mode from the tab in the right sidebar, and then I can choose the layer from the left sidebar, the layers panel, that represents the button, the link, or any other interactive object that your user will click to navigate to another view. You can also choose a whole group. Here I'm going to use a group of layers containing the trending link text. I've also got a layer here for optional link highlighting and a rectangle that creates a larger target area around the link text, which makes the link easier to click. From the prototype panel, I'll use the plus icon to add a new interaction. The trigger is on click, the action will navigate to, and the destination, here's where the board names come in useful, is the name of the board. A connector will show where the interactive trigger connected to the destination. I'll try the prototype out so you can see what I've added. We use the play button icon in the top right sidebar. This button will open your prototype in a new tab. And then I can click the trending button and it will take me to the trending board view. Going back to the canvas, next I'm going to add a prototype interaction to the shop all link. So just like I did before, I'll select that link group from the left layers panel and use the plus icon to add an interaction. Then on click, I'll navigate to the shop all board and there's the connector line again. Now I'm going to make the logo into a home link. I'll select the logo layer, add an interaction from the prototype panel, and then on click, the prototype will navigate to the home board. And there's the connection line for that interaction. So I think you've got the idea. I'm going to speed through adding the same interactions to each navigation link. Oh, look at all those crisscrossing connector lines. Now I've ensured all the navigation links are going to the right places. Did you notice this little Flow 1 button that's appearing above the home board? This is a shortcut to playing through the prototype that we've created, and it appears once you've added your first interaction and indicates the starting point for your flow. I'm going to rename the flow, something a bit more descriptive, and press the button to open the prototype in view mode again. And now I can click through my interactive prototype as if it were real web page navigation. Sometimes you want to prototype something as subtle as a hover style. You probably don't need to do this for every single button or link in your mockup, but specifying hover, active, and focus styles is a must-have in your design system. In this example, I'm prototyping the default, hover, and active states. For the active state, my button text changes from buy now to processing. Just like with my navigation example, I've got a board for each state with unique names. So from the layers panel, I'll choose the default button group on the default board, and then going back to the prototype panel, I'll use the plus icon to add a new interaction. So for a smooth hover-like transition, I'm actually going to use the mouse enter trigger, and then I'll use the toggle overlay action to seamlessly layer the destination board over the current board. The destination board is the hover board, and I'll position it relative to the default board centrally. They're the same size, so doing this should make sure that it just looks like a change in button states. Next, I want to unhover the button. This time on the hover button group, I'm adding a mouse leave trigger with a close overlay action to close the current overlay, and the destination is self. So this is because the overlay I'm closing is the hoverboard, and so what this means is when the button is unhovered, we'll return to the original board, which is the default board. Finally, I want to add the click interaction that changes the button into its active state. The trigger will be on click, and I'll use the open overlay action as it's a much smoother transition than the navigate to action. And the destination is the active board, and I'll position it again centrally relative to the hoverboard to ensure that kind of change of state effect. Now, before we test our prototype, I'm just going through each of these interactions and adding an animation effect. The default linear dissolve animation, so the same as it will be if you just add any animation, at just 200 milliseconds. And this will give us a nice CSS styled smooth transition when our button states change. Just like before, you can see here I've got this little flow button again, and I'm just going to give that a more descriptive name. And now I can press play to start my little button state, and you can see I hover, unhover, and then when I click the button, the text changes. Remembering to mock up all the different states in your UI can be tricky, but prototyping all of these state changes are really important because it prevents developers from having to make up the design for themselves. For this example, I'm mocking up the changes in state for a light mode and dark mode toggle. I've not just prototyped the toggle itself, but also included the labels and the background behind it. So I've got a light mode board and a dark mode board. This time I'm using the toggle background as a clickable element. I haven't even grouped these layers. I want the toggle to work no matter where you click inside it. And so to that layer, I'll add an interaction that triggers on click. The action will open an overlay, and that overlay will be the dark mode board. I'll position it centrally relative to the light mode board, so it will transition seamlessly between the two boards. And I'll add an animation so it will transition smoothly. Next, I want to close the overlay. Again, I'm choosing the toggle background layer, but this time from the dark mode board. And then I'll add an interaction with the on-click trigger. This will close the overlay. So the destination here is self, so it'll close the dark mode board overlay. Don't forget the animation. I'm selecting my light mode board as I want the prototype to start in light mode here, and the flow is already assigned to the correct board. So I'll just add a descriptive name in there. And now when I click my flow button to launch my prototype, I can click to toggle between light mode and dark mode and back again. So far we've used overlays to mimic other behaviors, but now it is time to use an overlay to actually prototype a UI overlay. In this next example, we'll return back to our poster store website and show how to prototype an overlay that appears over the page when the user triggers the filter button. I've got two boards here, one that has a filter button and one that shows a filter overlay. The filter overlay board has no fill background, and the overlay background has rounded corners and a shadow, which creates a true overlay style effect. From the Layers panel, I'm choosing all of the filter group layer on the All board. And from the Prototype panel, I'll add an on-click interaction. The action is Open Overlay, and the destination is the Filter Overlay board. We're positioning the overlay relative to the All board. This will open the overlay in a position relative to the filter button that triggered it. So this will ensure that your overlay appears where the user can see it. And we'll position that centrally. I'm also going to mimic that conventional overlay behavior by closing the overlay when you click outside of it. Next, I'll add an interaction to our close icon button component. Check out its nice big target area. We'll add a prototype interaction on click with the action to close overlay. This time we have to specifically choose the filter overlay board as a destination, not the self, as we want to close all of the overlay on click. Now I'll just give my flow a quick name and press the button. And there we have a very realistic filter overlay. I hope this tutorial has given you a head start in prototyping with Penpot. Would you like any more tutorials like this? Please just let us know in the community, which you can find a link to below, or just let us know in the comments. Say hi, I'd love to hear from you.